Will Smith. There are few names in Hollywood as universally recognized as Will Smith. For over 3 decades, he has been the face of laughter, action, and inspiration. A man whose journey from the streets of West Philadelphia to the heights of global stardom seemed to defy every odd. He was the Fresh Prince, the blockbuster king, the man who could make the world laugh, cry, and believe in the impossible. But behind the dazzling smile and the infectious charisma, there is a story far more complex, a story that at 56 has become a tapestry of triumph and tragedy, of dreams realized and heartbreak endured. This is not just the story of a superstar. It is the story of a man who has given everything to the world, only to find that some wounds run too deep for even the brightest spotlight to heal. Willard Carroll Smith, Jr. was born in 1968 in Philadelphia, the second of 4 children in a working-class family. His father, a strict Air Force veteran, ran a refrigeration business, while his mother was a school board administrator. The Smith household was a place of discipline and high expectations, but also of tension and volatility. Will would later recall nights when the sound of his parents arguing echoed through the walls, and moments when fear and uncertainty became his closest companions. Yet, even in those early years, there was something different about Will. A spark, a resilience, a refusal to let the darkness define him. He found escape in humor, in music, in the rhythms of hip-hop that pulsed through the city's streets. By the time he was a teenager, Will had transformed himself into the Fresh Prince, a local rap sensation with a gift for storytelling and a smile that could light up any room. Together with his childhood friend DJ Jazzy Jeff, he conquered the charts, winning the first ever Grammy for rap in 1989. But success came with its own set of challenges. Money poured in, but so did temptation. By his early 20s, Will was nearly bankrupt, the victim of bad advice and reckless spending. The IRS came knocking, and the future that once seemed so bright suddenly looked uncertain. It was a moment that could have broken him, but instead it became the crucible that forged his next act. In 1990, salvation arrived in the form of a sitcom, a show that would change his life and the landscape of television forever. The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air was more than just a hit, it was a cultural phenomenon, a show that brought laughter and hope to millions, while quietly addressing issues of race, class, and family. For 6 seasons, Will Smith became a household name, his comedic timing and emotional depth winning over audiences of every age and background. But even as he basked in the glow of success, the old insecurities lingered. The pressure to be perfect, to provide, to never let anyone see him sweat, became a silent burden. When the show ended, Will could have faded into nostalgia, another star lost to the passage of time. Instead, he reinvented himself once again, this time as a movie star. The 1990s and early 2000s belonged to Will Smith, from Independence Day to Men in Black, from Ali to The Pursuit of Happiness. He was unstoppable, a force of nature whose energy and optimism seemed boundless. He became one of the highest-paid actors in the world, a symbol of hope and possibility for millions. But with every new success, the stakes grew higher, and the pressure mounted. The world saw a man at the top of his game, but inside, Will was fighting battles no one could see. The tragedy of Will Smith is not found in a single moment or a single mistake. It is woven through the fabric of a life lived in the spotlight. A life where every triumph is shadowed by doubt, every joy tempered by loss. At 56, the heartbreak is not just in what he has endured, but in what he has lost along the way. The innocence of youth, the certainty of family, the peace that comes from knowing you are enough. This is the story of a man who has given everything, only to discover that some wounds never truly heal. For Will Smith, The journey from beloved sitcom star to global icon was paved with both dazzling highs and devastating lows. As the world cheered his every move, few realized the cost of living under such relentless scrutiny. The transition to film stardom was not just a leap in career, but a leap into a new kind of pressure, one where every misstep was magnified, every flaw dissected by millions. Will's charm and work ethic became his armor, but even the strongest armor can crack. The more he achieved, the more he felt the need to prove himself, not just to the world, but to the little boy inside who still remembered the fear and chaos of his childhood home. The 1990s and early 2000s were a golden era for Will. He was the king of summer blockbusters, the man who could turn any script into box office gold. Men in Black, Enemy of the State, Bad Boys, and I, Robot. Each film cemented his status as a leading man. But behind the scenes, the pressure was mounting. Will was determined to be the provider, the protector, the one who never failed. He worked tirelessly, often at the expense of his own well-being. The world saw a man who had it all, but Will saw a man who could lose it all at any moment. His personal life, too, became a stage. In 1997, he married actress Jada Pinkett, and together they became one of Hollywood's most talked about couples. Their love story seemed like a fairy tale, but the reality was far more complicated. Both Will and Jada brought their own scars into the marriage. Old wounds that fame and fortune could not heal. The demands of their careers, the constant attention from the media, and the challenge of raising children in the spotlight created a pressure cooker environment. Will wanted to be the perfect husband and father, but perfection is a myth, and the cracks soon began to show. The couple's struggles were often hidden behind red carpet smiles and carefully crafted interviews, but the truth was harder to conceal. Rumors of infidelity, separation, and unconventional arrangements swirled for years, fueled by tabloids and social media. Will and Jada tried to control the narrative, but the world was always watching, always judging. The pain of public scrutiny was compounded by the pain of private disappointment. Will once admitted that he felt like a failure when his first marriage ended, and he was determined not to repeat the same mistakes. But the harder he tried to hold everything together, the more it seemed to slip through his fingers. Fatherhood brought its own set of challenges. Will's children, Jaden and Willow, grew up in a world where their every move was analyzed and criticized. Will wanted to give them the freedom he never had, but also the structure he believed was necessary for success. It was a delicate balance, and one that often left him feeling torn. He encouraged their creativity, supported their ambitions, and defended them against the harshness of the public eye. But he also worried, constantly, that he was failing them in ways he couldn't see. The weight of responsibility was immense, and the fear of repeating the mistakes of his own father haunted him. As the years passed, the cracks in Will's carefully constructed world became harder to hide. The relentless pursuit of success, the pressure to be everything to everyone, and the pain of unresolved wounds began to take their toll. Will's smile, once so effortless, became a mask, one he wore for the world, even as he struggled to recognize the man behind it. The tragedy of Will Smith is not just in the challenges he has faced, but in the way those challenges have shaped him. At 56, he stands as a man who has given everything, only to find that some battles are fought in silence, and some heartbreaks are too deep for words. The world has always loved a comeback story, and for much of his career, Will Smith seemed to embody the very spirit of resilience. No matter the setback, he found a way to rise again, to reinvent himself, to turn pain into power. But the truth is, Even the strongest spirits can be worn down by the relentless tide of expectation. As Will entered his 50s, the challenges he faced became more personal, more profound, and more public than ever before. The man who once seemed invincible was suddenly vulnerable, his struggles laid bare for all to see. One of the most defining moments of Will's recent years came not on a movie set, but on a stage watched by millions around the world. The 2022 Academy Awards should have been a night of triumph, a celebration of a career that had spanned decades and inspired generations. Instead, it became a night that would haunt him, a moment that would forever change the way the world saw Will Smith. When he walked onto that stage and struck comedian Chris Rock, the world gasped. The laughter stopped. The headlines exploded. In an instant, the image of the affable, unflappable Will Smith was shattered. The aftermath was brutal. The incident became a global talking point, dissected and debated by everyone from late-night hosts to social media commentators. Will's apology was heartfelt, but the damage was done. He was banned from the Oscars for a decade, his reputation tarnished, his legacy called into question. For a man who had spent his entire life trying to be a force for good, the weight of that single moment was almost unbearable. Friends and fans alike wondered what could have driven him to such an uncharacteristic act. The answer, perhaps, lies in the years of pressure, pain, and unspoken grief that had built up inside him. Will later spoke about the incident with a raw honesty that few celebrities ever allow themselves. He admitted to feeling lost, overwhelmed, and deeply ashamed. He talked about the years of trying to be perfect, of suppressing his own needs and emotions for the sake of others. The slap was not just a moment of anger. It was the eruption of decades of pain, frustration, and self-doubt. It was the breaking point for a man who had spent his life trying to hold everything together, only to find that sometimes even the strongest among us can break. In the months that followed, Will withdrew from the spotlight. He took time to reflect, to heal, to try and make sense of the chaos that had engulfed his life. He spoke openly about his struggles with mental health, about the therapy and self-work he was doing to rebuild himself from the inside out. For the first time, the world saw not just the superstar, but the man, the father, the husband, the son, the human being who had been carrying the weight of the world for far too long. The tragedy of Will Smith is not that he fell, but that he fell so publicly, so spectacularly, after a lifetime of trying to do everything right. The heartbreak is in the realization that no amount of success, no number of awards, can protect us from our own pain. Will's journey is a reminder that even those who seem to have it all are fighting battles we cannot see. At 56, he stands as a man who has been broken and rebuilt, who has lost and found himself more times than he can count. His story is not just one of tragedy, but of the courage it takes to face our darkest moments and keep moving forward, even when the world is watching. For Will Smith, the journey of healing after the Oscars incident was not a straight line. It was a winding road marked by introspection, regret, and the slow, painful process of rebuilding trust, not just with the world, but with himself. The public saw the headlines, the apologies, the statements. But what they didn't see were the quiet nights filled with doubt, the conversations with family that cut deeper than any tabloid story, and the moments when Will wondered if he would ever truly be forgiven. The man who had spent his life making others laugh was now forced to confront the parts of himself he had long tried to hide. His relationship with Jada, already the subject of endless speculation, was tested in ways neither of them could have predicted. The couple had always prided themselves on their honesty, their willingness to share their struggles with the world. But now, every word, every gesture, was analyzed and critiqued. The pressure to present a united front was immense, but so was the need to be authentic. Will and Jada found themselves navigating a new reality, one where vulnerability was both a weapon and a shield. They spoke openly about their pain, their mistakes, and their commitment to growth. But the world was not always kind in its response. For their children, Jaden and Willow, the fallout was equally profound. Growing up in the spotlight had already forced them to mature quickly, but now they were faced with the challenge of supporting their father, while also forging their own paths. Will worried constantly about the impact his actions would have on their lives, about the legacy he was leaving behind. He wanted to be a source of strength for them, but he also knew that true strength sometimes means admitting when you are weak. The Smith family, once seen as the epitome of Hollywood success, became a symbol of something far more real: the messy, complicated, and often painful process of being human. As Will worked to rebuild his life, he turned to the things that had always brought him solace: music, writing, and reflection. He poured his heart into his memoir, sharing stories he had never told before, exposing the raw nerves beneath the surface. The process was both cathartic and terrifying. For a man who had spent his life performing, the act of telling his own story, unfiltered and unguarded, was a new kind of bravery. The book became a bestseller, not just because of Will's fame, but because of his honesty. Readers saw themselves in his struggles, his doubts, his desire to be better. But even as he found new ways to connect with his audience, the pain of public judgment lingered. Social media, once a place where Will could share his joy and creativity, became a minefield of criticism and negativity. Every post, every comment, was scrutinized. The world that had once cheered his every move now seemed eager to remind him of his failures. Will learned to step back, to protect his peace, to focus on the people and passions that truly mattered. He realized that forgiveness, both from others and from himself, would not come quickly or easily. Through it all, Will's resilience remained. He continued to work, to create, to inspire. He took on new roles, both on and off the screen, determined to show that a single moment does not define a life. He spoke to young people about the importance of mental health, about the dangers of perfectionism, about the value of vulnerability. He reminded them, and himself, that it's okay to fall, as long as you keep getting back up. The tragedy of Will Smith is not just in the heartbreak he has endured, but in the way he has chosen to face it with honesty, with humility, and with a determination to keep moving forward, no matter how heavy the burden. As Will Smith moved through his mid-50s, the world watched a man in transition, a man who had been both hero and villain in the public eye, who had known the heights of adoration and the depths of disappointment. Yet, beneath the headlines and the viral moments, there was a quieter, more profound transformation taking place. Will was learning, perhaps for the first time, to live for himself. The need to please everyone, to be the perfect son, husband, father, and star, was slowly giving way to a deeper understanding of self-worth. It was a lesson learned not in the glow of the spotlight, but in the shadows of solitude. He began to speak more openly about his mental health, about the therapy sessions that had become a lifeline, about the importance of confronting the pain he had carried since childhood. Will admitted that for much of his life he had been running from fear, from failure, from the possibility that he might not be enough. The slap at the Oscars was not just a moment of anger. It was the culmination of years of suppressed emotion, of trying to hold back the tide with nothing but willpower. In facing his own darkness, Will found a new kind of strength, The strength to be vulnerable, to ask for help, to admit that he was still a work in progress. His relationship with Jada entered a new phase, one marked by honesty and acceptance rather than perfection. They spoke candidly about their struggles, about the ways they had hurt each other, about the decision to stay together not out of obligation, but out of a shared commitment to growth. Theirs was no longer the fairy tale romance the world had imagined, but something more real, more resilient. We'll learn that love is not about never falling, but about choosing to stand up together, again and again, no matter how many times life knocks you down. For his children, Will became a different kind of role model. He encouraged Jaden and Willow to embrace their own paths, to define success on their own terms, to understand that failure is not the end, but a part of the journey. He apologized for the times he had been absent, for the moments when his own pain had made him distant or demanding. In doing so, he gave them permission to be imperfect, to make mistakes, to be human. The Smith family, once seen as a symbol of unattainable perfection, became a testament to the power of forgiveness and the beauty of second chances. Professionally, Will continued to challenge himself. He took on roles that forced him to dig deeper, to confront parts of himself he had long ignored. He produced projects that told stories of resilience, redemption, and hope. He used his platform to advocate for mental health awareness, to speak out against the stigma that keeps so many suffering in silence. Will understood that his greatest legacy would not be the awards on his shelf, but the lives he touched by sharing his truth. Yet, even as he found new purpose, the heartbreak lingered. The pain of public failure, the loss of innocence, the realization that some wounds may never fully heal. These were the shadows that followed him. Will learn to live with them, to let them shape him without defining him. He found solace in music, in writing, in the simple joys of family and friendship. He discovered that happiness is not a destination, but a practice, a daily choice to find meaning in the midst of struggle. At 56, Will Smith stands as a man transformed by tragedy, but not defeated by it. His story is a reminder that even the brightest stars can fall, that even the strongest among us can break. But it is also a testament to the power of resilience, of honesty, of the relentless pursuit of healing. The tragedy of Will Smith is beyond heartbreaking, not because he has fallen, but because he has dared to rise, again and again, in the face of unimaginable pain. As Will Smith enters the next chapter of his life, the world sees a man forever changed by the storms he has weathered. The boy from West Philadelphia, who once dreamed of making people laugh, has become a symbol of both the heights of human achievement and the depths of human vulnerability. At 56, his story is no longer just about fame or fortune, but about the courage it takes to keep moving forward when the world expects you to fall apart. The heartbreak that shadows his journey is not just his own. It is the heartbreak of anyone who has ever tried to be everything to everyone, only to discover that the cost is sometimes more than you can bear. Will's days are quieter now, filled less with the chaos of movie sets and more with the rhythms of ordinary life. He spends time with his family, cherishing the moments that once slipped by unnoticed. He finds peace in the simple act of being present, of listening, of letting go of the need to control every outcome. The man who once measured his worth by applause has learned to find value in silence, in reflection, in the love that remains when the cameras are gone. He has become a mentor to younger artists, sharing not just his successes, but his failures, his doubts, his hard-won wisdom. He tells them that greatness is not about never falling, but about having the strength to rise, to learn, to forgive. The world may never forget the night of the Oscars, But Will refuses to let that moment define him. He knows now that life is not a script you can rewrite, but a journey you must live, with all its messiness and pain. He has made peace with his past, accepting that some chapters will always be marked by regret, by loss, by heartbreak. But he also knows that every day is a chance to begin again, to write a new story, to choose kindness over anger, hope over despair. The tragedy of Will Smith is not that he has suffered, but that he has survived, that he has found meaning in the ashes of his own mistakes. In interviews, Will speaks with a new humility, a gentleness that comes from having faced his own darkness and emerged, if not unscathed, then at least unbroken. He talks about the importance of gratitude, of finding joy in the smallest things: a sunrise, a shared meal, a quiet walk with someone you love. He admits that he is still learning, still growing, still making mistakes, but he is no longer afraid to be seen as flawed, as human. The mask has fallen away, and in its place is a man who understands that true strength is found not in perfection, but in perseverance. For his fans, Will's journey is both a cautionary tale and a source of inspiration. It is a reminder that even our heroes are human, that even the most beloved among us can falter. But it is also a testament to the power of forgiveness, of resilience, of the relentless pursuit of healing. Will's willingness to share his pain, to own his failures, to keep striving for better, has given hope to countless others who struggle in silence. He has shown that it is possible to lose everything and still find a way back, to be broken and still be whole. As he looks to the future, Will Smith does so with a sense of peace he has never known before. He is no longer chasing the approval of the world, no longer running from the shadows of his past. He is simply living, one day at a time, one moment at a time, grateful for the chance to love, to create, to be. The tragedy of Will Smith is beyond heartbreaking, not because of what he has lost, but because of what he has found. The strength to forgive, the courage to heal, and the wisdom to know that, in the end, it is not the applause that matters, but the love that endures. If his story has touched your heart, if his journey has made you reflect on your own, leave a tribute in his honor. Because Will Smith is not just a star on the screen. He is a reminder that, no matter how dark the night, there is always a way back to the light.